So for our final speaker, I'd like to introduce Dean Clayton from Micro Focus, and Dean's going to give a service provider perspective, if you like, but also look at some of the practical steps involved in really delivering service automation with value. So thanks very much, Dean. I'll hand over to you.
All right, thanks, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
And have I got the slides sharing correctly? Oh, it looks like I'm...
I think so, yeah.
All right, cool.
Looks like you're on the screen.
I got Max, my virtual agent for our products, to help automate the provisioning of my presentation. So hopefully it's sharing okay. Okay, so what I wanted, my name is Dean Clayton. I am from Micro Focus. I'll talk a little bit more about later on about some practical examples with our customers and how you could potentially utilize that to help you moving forward. But I just want to do a little bit of scene setting first. One of the things that we do in Micro Focus is we're very keen to discuss with our customers and the companies that we work with to understand where they are looking to go, what are their priorities as they go forward. And this was kind of a bit of a survey we did sort of the middle of last year, looking into what were the priorities of our customers, but also actually across the wider industry. And probably some of these options here may resonate with you, but I think a couple of those obviously come back to that some of the things that we've been talking about today around productivity, AI, automation, and I think what Vaughan's, Duncan, and Claire have all mentioned, which is all about that customer experience as well. So that's what we heard, and from a IT service management perspective or enterprise service management perspective, which is where I work within Micro Focus. We kind of boil that down into these three areas. And I think today what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of talk about that, that AI and that automation topic. But I think some of that also covers across the rest of it, because ultimately, when you want to deliver more immersive services and improve, how IT is perceived across the organization, so that we get out of the basement and we can be seen across the rest of the organization. I think it's all about making sure we have the right kind of user engagement around that. Now, first, I want to quick apologies. Marketing team have made me do this, but I wanted to put a couple of slides together, not to pitch our product, but really more just to give you a little bit of an insight, because some of the use cases I'll talk about a bit later on obviously might show screens within the product. And I just wanted to make sure it was clear. So as Micro Focus, we have a service management product which we call SMAX. Yes, that's correct. That's what that's the acronym. Service Management Automation X. The X actually stands for 10 because it's the 10th iteration of the product. We have a long history that goes back to HP and Peregrine many years ago. And our product SMAX is part of a single platform solution that covers across obviously many different areas, including things like obviously event management, AI ops, patch management, financial management, cloud management, etc. But we cover off the main kind of ITSM, ESM functionality within that. So the usual stuff you'll get from pretty much any product. As always, for us, it's all about that single portal, having access to anywhere, whether that's mobile or having a brandable portable fit with content suitable for the people that need to access it and make sure they have a good user experience. We're also at what we call a low-code, no-code type platform. So it's very much about giving the power back to, should we say, the business people. So it's not necessarily having to be overly reliant on the admins to do the work. The people that own the administrators of the service catalog can do everything they need, but likewise you can handle things over to, say, process owners to help with building that kind of stuff out as well. So that's obviously all within the products, and we have a concept which we call business rules, which is how we talk about moving should we say, doing the automation within the product. We also have built-in AI and analytics. So the screenshot there is a classic kind of AI type concept, clustering, to be able to understand what's going on within an organization. And I'll talk about how some of our customers have used that to help progress on their automation journey. And then finally, for us, it's all about seamless integration and being able to automate anything. And that's not just within the product. And I'm going to show some of that to talk about some of that today, but also where you can do things like robotic process automation, right? Where you can have those magic bots, whether they're the Turing bots is always questionable, but they'll, basically learn from what you're doing, repeat those steps, and then you can then plug that into the way you do automation within your IT ecosystem. Okay, right. Promise that's all the marketing slides I've done. Hopefully I'll get myself in the good books with Alison today. Fingers crossed. So how can automation and AI or machine learning help you within your business? So I want to walk through an example that we had with one of our customers, and I'm going to show you the long version. And then when I get to the end of my little talk and we go through some other individual examples, I'm going to come back to this one and show you what they did. So classic situation, right? I'm at my laptop, I'm working on something, I get an error. Hopefully it's not the blue screen of death from Microsoft. But the typical situation is you're going to find a lot of people will phone that service desk. Then, of course, the service desk do their best, right? We've got to ask the questions. What do we see? Maybe I'm going to look up knowledge, try and find an answer. Have we tried turning it off and on again? Sometimes that fixes everything, right? Then we try and get them to send a screenshot. Maybe that's done over email. Maybe put it in the post. I don't know. But the service desk obviously try that first time fix. And in some cases, that's not going to work, right? Maybe they haven't got the right kind of information available to them and it's got to go to another team, whether that's desktop support or someone else. And that's where you got the cool kids in the organization, right? The people that know the stuff, the real techies, the geeks. They know what to do. They get it fixed just like that, right? I've spent all that time trying to work out what it is and they've just done it in 5 seconds. And of course, I then update the customer, let them know that we've closed the ticket, and hopefully they're a happy user. And I think when we talk about automation, when we talk about the different aspects of it, you look at that as a common example of how long that scenario can take. Now, you're not going to be able to hit every scenario in exactly the same way, right? Every different reactive should we say support request or incident or whatever that comes into your organization, you're not necessarily going to be able to automate all of those, but there's a lot of commonalities with these in some of the steps that you would go through. But I suspect with some of you, some of those scenarios could, maybe it's a couple of hours, maybe in some cases it's a couple of days, hopefully not, it's several weeks, although I did have a customer that had a couple of processes like this that took 5 or 6 weeks to go through their full system. So if we look at automation, and we kind of, I think it was kind of covered a little bit earlier on by Claire and by Vaughan's around these, why are we trying to do it? Well, the first one is reducing errors, right? Create predictable, repeatable processes that can be automated. And then again, saving time and money, reducing operational costs by automating, and again, with those repetitive tasks, and hopefully basically be able to do more. Really interesting example I had from one of customers that came across to us. They were employing 3 senior Active Directory developers on probably a lot more money than well, definitely more money than I'm on. And all they were doing day in, day out was adding and removing users to groups, right? Because they had no automation. And you think about the skill set. Now, maybe one of those people was using that as a way to, keep a nice, relaxing job, should we say. But again, going back to something that Vaughan said, is that's kind of thing that you could quite easily automate, maybe have a couple of runbook scripts, and suddenly those people, they can actually get more use out of their day and focus on delivering more benefits around how you're utilizing Active Directory within your organization. And luckily they did do that. It just took them a while to get that sorted out. So let's go into a couple of examples, and I'll tie it in with how we do that within SMAX. So the first thing I want to talk about is about process automation. And one of the things I think that people tend to maybe it's because people always come back to ITIL and think about people, process, and technology. But I think to do automation, you've got to add a fourth, should we say, leg to that stool, and that's data. You need the data in the system to be able to help you, whether that is, purely in the example here, where, we had a customer, they set up some automation rules to basically just list the people who you could assign a ticket to members of a group. Now, some of us might go, well, that's just how our product works, and that's absolutely fine. And a lot of products now, we're trying to do that in the way that we work to help yourself, should we say, and cover off some of those. But let's think of another one around that. So I used to work on a service desk. I was Moss minus the haircut almost 25 years ago. That makes me feel really old saying that right now. But the ticketing system that we were using at the time, I'd like to say, glad to say it was a competitor to what I currently use today. We would have a customer call through, we'd fill out the details in the form. There'd be lots of extra reporting data that we'd have to put into a ticket to close it. But then when it came to closing it, we'd have this situation whereby I'd put in a completion, the description, the summary, I'd put in my completion code or my closure code for the reason for doing it. And then I'd have to go and set the status to resolved. Now, one of the things that we have in SMAX is out of the box, and what some customers have actually expanded on a little bit in other areas, is if you look at how you're utilizing the product, most of the time, probably 99% of the time, once you've entered your reason for closing the ticket and you've put in your completion code, you don't need to set that status field to resolved. You just save the record and have it automatically move to the next step. And it's a very simple process automation thing that you could do. But if you look at how that builds up across your organization, let's say you're an organization that does just a couple hundred tickets a day, or even maybe several thousand a day, right? You're probably saving 1-2 seconds per user as part of that closure. Well, build that up over a day, build that up over a week, over a month, over a year, by your entire IT support organization. Maybe you're into an ESM space and you're utilizing it across other areas like facilities or legal or HR. It suddenly starts to add up in how much that can have benefits to the organization. And the other thing is there's a lot of desire within service management to try and get the right kind of reporting out. And I think I look at this the other way and kind of sort of say, we sometimes go a little bit too far with that reporting side, and maybe it's just we just need to look at how we measure properly. But we get all these extra fields that we ask people to fill in, when actually, whether that's as part of the classification of a ticket, you can set that automatically, or maybe that's something you can do through your catalog. The other example I've got on here is obviously about setting SLAs. I mean, this is quite a common thing, obviously setting up the appropriate SLAs. This is just an example of a business rule in SMAX and how it works, but literally, changing how that's done based on, and you can have rules put into your system to say, this particular part of the business, we want them to have a more a faster delivery time, and they have a more stringent SLA for delivering their equipment. And again, that's all about putting the automation to help people understand and prioritize and work with what they're doing. Then, and I think this comes back to something that Vaughan's mentioned earlier on in the first session, approvals. I'm a big, I was nodding my head along quite a lot when Vaughan's mentioned about cabs and the usage of cabs. And sometimes being a bit overkill in that, you've got a network patch or to a dev box and everyone and their dog has to do the approvals, right? Think about how you build out those approval plans within your organization so that they are the relevant people and only the relevant people need to approve. Okay. And also then doing that within the tool, right? Pretty much every tool does this. They have some form of approval capability within the product that allows you to building, should we say, an approval plan, an approval flow, right? And if you wanted to, you can even put in additional rules in to say like there's some kind of governance approval over a tool. So in this example here, this is one of our customers. They pretty much said that in general, for most, should we say, normal changes, it was just the service owner that would have to sign off on the change. Obviously, there was work that the change management team would do to validate before it got to the approval stage. But if it was coming through as an emergency change, they threw that to their emergency cab group and they'd handle and manage it that way. And again, it's another form of automation, you know, and a lot of people do think, oh, I've got to have a bot to do it, or I've got to build out some orchestration, but you can do simple things like this within whatever product you've got to help you move forward. And then the final step on that, of course, is task plans. Mapping out your customer use cases. You know, most products, they'll do it off the back of your service catalog, right? But you might also have other ways of doing that within your products as well. But this is about building out specific business rule, building out automated tasks so that you can reduce the amount of work that's needed for someone within your business. And within that, you know, having that mix of the appropriate steps of what's needed, to me, is one of the interesting parts of how to go on that journey around moving to that continual improvement of automation. I got a really good example from one of our UK customers, one of the UK government customers that we have. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to name because this is being recorded. Their joiners, leavers, starters process, when they started and they purchased our product, we sat down with them. We said, right, the first thing you need to do is pick up a pen, pick up a piece of paper, and draw out and map out your process flow. What's your use case? Let's draw it out and understand how it works. And we got them to do that with their new starters process, and it mapped out as I think it was 12. Originally, it was around about 12 manual activities, right? 12 tasks, one in serial, one by one they do. And some of those were things like go and get them a mobile phone or go and get them a laptop, and you know, which in itself would then have obviously a sub process within them. But others were things like go and check that this person's on a spreadsheet from HR to validate which group they've got to be put in to be added to Active Directory, that kind of thing. Well, they started on this journey, and what we did was day one, they said, right, we're going to draw out within the tool this manual set of tasks, right? And we'll just have them all nice and serial in one long serial line. And then what they did is they went on that journey of continual improvement, and they slowly but surely looked at each of those individual steps and said, how can we make this better? And in some cases, they had to have conversations with other parts of the business, you know, and jump out of that little IT silo that they were in. And sometimes, you know, they knew the answer themselves, or in some cases, there was no way to automate it. You know, one of the things that they had within their business at that time was they didn't have any way to, should we say, automate the way they set up some of their PCs. You know, it was still quite manual at the time. But then they looked to, but they had a project to look at doing the network boot and deployment of software to a laptop. So over a 6-month period, they picked off some of those individual tasks. And when I went back to go and see them on that project, they turned that 12-step serial process into what looked quite complex. It was lovingly referred to as the upside down Christmas tree within their organization. And it was over 45 tasks within there. But what they'd done was they'd mapped out in a way whereby instead of having those 12 manual steps, they were now down to 3. And all the rest was just the automation kicking in and the decisions within where to go. Do I go left? Do I go right? Do I, what, you know, based on the data that I've got that's been given when that ticket's been created, where do I go? And they built that over time. And one of the other key things is then they looked at how they could then use that and replicate that for other areas, or actually should we say, take some of those sub processes so they can redo. Good example of that, as I said, they looked when everyone joined the company, they got a laptop and they got a mobile phone. So what they did was they mapped them out as sub processes. So in that task that should we say original ticket that came in, what would happen would be there would be some point during the flow, it would spawn and create a child ticket to get the mobile phone and a child ticket to do the laptop. Those then became parallel activities, which meant the overall time to delivery to that end user went from a good couple of weeks down to 2 or 3 business days. So you really, there's lots of ways to do that. And it's not, again, it's all about bit by bit. And this, I think, is where, again, it comes down to obviously the products that you've got and what you're using. But I'd expect most, products that are out there or what you're particularly using has a concept of a service catalog. They have templates or models, across the different record types, and normally bringing that all together into those. So you have that high level, going back to what I said originally, you have that high level process flow, okay, for your incident management process. And as part of that, maybe you build in the rules to say, okay, we don't need to set the status to resolve, because once we filled out these details, we know we're going to move forward, or we're going to move from classify to first line support once we know that we've got the right classification in. But then taking that to the next level for the individual use cases, and then bracket them up and potentially making them in a way where they could be consumable in lots of different ways. So going back, that example with the laptop and the mobile phone, they spawn new service catalog offerings for request a new mobile phone and request a new laptop, which they basically pretty much plugged into what they'd built for their new starter process. Okay, so let's look at that. But of course, there is that orchestration, that more powerful way that you can do that. And this is typically when you get into, should we say, that software deployment area, or maybe you want to restart and test services within your organization. I think this is what a lot of people, when they think of automation, is what they kind of focusing on. And again, it is vitally important to look at this, and it's just about utilizing it and breaking it down into ways that can be useful to you and your organization. So typical orchestration is when you're looking at those more complex flows. And the example I've got on here is actually one from one of our customers. It's actually within the banking sector. They have their event management run into their service management tool. And when the ticket arrives, if it's certain types of event handling, obviously there's things that they do maybe on the event handling side, but when they come through, typically what they run is within their incident model, they'll run some orchestration to do some health checks, right? And pull that data, maybe do it's a ping test, or maybe it's check on some services, that kind of thing, and pull that data into the ticket so that if it has to go to second line, they can go, I've got the data at hand to reduce them having to then spend more time and look into it. And of course, if you think about it in the right kind of way, what you can actually do is move that a little bit longer, because you can, one of the things they did was they said as part of their health check, right, we'll do the health check. If certain things come back as failures, let's say we can't ping the server, or our service is not working, we'll attempt to do some restarts as part of that process. And then if there's a failure, that's fine. We'll report that on the incident ticket. But at least it means that the second line haven't got to waste time from doing those manual operations. All right. So, and again, we get into change management, it's a similar kind of thing. You're doing that more proactive stuff. I think the amount of time and effort that potentially could be saved by automating what you need to do around, say, a Microsoft Patch Tuesday, and the amount of servers you might need to update can make a huge difference within your organization once you start to do that. Now, I'm going to change topics and quickly switch across to AI and machine learning. I've stolen the science fiction author Isaac Asimov's 3 laws for, should we say, how we interpret our laws in the 3 laws of AI and machine learning in Micro Focus. I think I was looking at this the other day, and I couldn't believe actually Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics was 1943. So we've, the idea and concepts of robotics, AI, and machine learning has been around for quite a long time. But for us, within Micro Focus, we look at it as 3 areas. So we try within our product, we want to make sure that AI machine learning is core of the product. I think this one's actually quite an interesting one, because irrespective, and something that Duncan mentioned up about trust, your data within your service management, within your organization, you're going to have a lot of data within your service management tool. And there's lots of, and this isn't a knock on other vendors or anything, but a lot, for you to potentially utilize that data and how you want to deliver and have AI assist you, it may be that you've got to send that data out and trust a third party. So we kind of try to, should we say, alleviate that for our customers. We wanted to make sure that it was core within the product. So when you install it, or whether you're using it as a SaaS service from us, all your data is your own. The second thing is to look at use cases and business outcomes driven. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. And then the third one is about automation. To me, it's about automating machine learning. So there's machine learning where obviously you're going and it's indexing and pulling back the data and looking how it can then do that looking at what I can't remember the phrase that Duncan mentioned earlier on, but being able to determine the right kind of way of how to interpret the data, but it might not be correct in all cases. So it's kind of there to have AI assist you rather than focus on doing all the work for you, because as again, it's got to learn, and there might be some bias as part of that. So we take three particular types of approaches, outcomes for key stakeholders that we go with, and we look at it from, primarily to me, it's about that user experience. So the business user, the end users that are out there within your organization. You've also got the agents, and then obviously the process owners, the supervisor process owners. We try looking in these three areas. So one is self-sufficiency. So how can we use AI machine learning to help benefit your end users? Can we automate the way they talk with your service desk? I think everyone these days talks about virtual agents, and I think that's quite key around that. And ultimately, that also ties into knowledge management, right? Being able to suggest the right kind of knowledge management, the right articles. That from a customer perspective reduces the number of tickets actually end up going into the service desk, but also makes them feel more empowered, right? How many, I'm pretty sure for the last, I'm going to say 15 years, I'm probably longer now, ever since, should we say, Google became search engine #1, the phrase of, oh, I'll just Google it myself rather than phone IT support has been around. And I think although maybe Google's kind of slightly different direction with some of their ads and the approaches they take today, I think it's still fairly relevant that occurs. From the agent, it's all about productivity. So shorter processing time, how AI can assist with that. And then from a process owner, it's about KPI improvements. How can we get better at what we do? So let's cover off a couple of these, and these are ideas and things that we've done with customers, either with a product out of the box or ways in which we've extended it for them. So OCR, optical character recognition, taking text from images, right? Being able to bring that across into your thing. That obviously reduces the end user input. If I can do that from my mobile phone, upload an image of a screenshot, and that data is pulled automatically into the ticket, great. Next one, CI detection. This one is all about automatically aligning with the configuration items. So configuration item, not continual improvement within your system. And then the third one, virtual agents, right? Being able to use those, going back to what Duncan mentioned earlier, having that proper interface that people know it's not a person, but hopefully will help solve their answer for them. Then we look into the productivity and process owner type stuff. Intelligent suggestions. And I think this one's quite key. I think there's still a maturity cycle, especially within different companies and organizations, about, should we say, auto assigning tickets. Sometimes if you have AI in there, it's only going to be as good as the data it's got. So therefore you could have people that maybe cherry pick it tickets and that works in their favor because they get all the easy tickets within the thing. So maybe suggesting and doing that, or highlighting who's got the expertise within the organization. The other one is then around analytics, but also how you can improve. So use that AI to kind of look at what's successful, what's not, and then help you identify where it's going. Good example of that is identifying services which maybe are bringing down your overall success rate of change. And then the other big one is pattern clustering. This one has actually been really useful for some of our customers. where they've looked at the clustering of tickets that come through and use that to start and identify where they want to go on their journey to automation within the system. So identifying what's a higher number of tickets, which ultimately by potentially automating them, makes it easier for them to move forward with their reducing the load on their service desk. So I'm going to come back now to that original example that we got from one of our customers and how they basically looked at automation AI to make it easier. So same error message.
5 minutes then.
Not a problem, Mark. Almost done.
Thank you.
Got that error message. This time they're taking a picture with a mobile app that's automatically creating the ticket. You've got the optical character recognition that's pulling the text out of that image that might be relevant, mapping, and having the AI map that with the relevant offering within the system using maybe intents or within natural language processing or maybe automation aligned with the catalog. Then having that run a process flow, a task plan. And in their case, with one of the main error messages they had that we're using, it was related to basically access to certain software that they were running. So they would assign a robot worker. So they would basically do some orchestration, which was actually adding people into appropriate groups, automatically closing the ticket, and then sending the customer a satisfaction survey. So that then turns what was something for them, which was around about a 12 hours working hours turnaround on standard tickets that were coming through, down to be handled in a mere seconds, and hopefully getting some good positive reviews in their satisfaction surveys. Now, of course, you're not going to be able to do that in all cases, and that's where you get to the more extreme ends, but hopefully it gives you some ideas on where to go. So to wrap up, my key takeaways from my talk. So the first one, start now and start small. All you need to do is look at, as I said, map out those use cases. So look at your use cases, get your pen, get a bit of paper, start to draw them out. Or if you prefer Visio, or you've got, I don't know, an iPad with a pencil, you can do it that way as well, right? It doesn't matter where you are within the organization, you can start to look it out and then look at cross collaborating. Think about how AI and machine learning can assist you. As again, things like pattern clustering that might help identify areas within your business. We had one of our customers had a situation where it turned out the majority of their tickets were all down to the fact that on the Thursday, on the second Thursday of the month, one of their mail servers went down. But they didn't see that because they weren't doing that proactive problem management and looking at the tickets being created because it was hidden amongst everything else that was going on. So that pattern clustering from AI can make a huge difference in trying to solve that. And then finally, user experience is key. And I think whenever you want to put automation in, think about it about the different personas that are going to be touching it and be wanting to use it. So whether that's your end users and how they interact with you, whether that's through a portal, the phone, Teams, chat bots, email, and how you're making sure you're making that easier through automation, but also for your agents as well, and reducing, get them to enjoy their job, remove some of the monotonous, boring stuff away from them. So with that, I'm all done. Thank you very much. Hopefully that was useful, and back to you, Mark.